Hello, my name is Anja Schneider, and we're based in Berlin. I'm a DJ since more than, oh my God, can I say this, 15 years. I have a label called Zeus Music, and I'm quite long in the industry. And you catch me here in the studio of us. I share a studio room with Jan-Eric Scholz, you met him before, and Klaas Lindblad from Black Hat Studios, and it's all called Anja Schneider Productions somehow. Don't you worry. So we met, actually, we are friends since a long time, since a lot of years. I met Sasse actually before I started my first label. Without him, I wouldn't probably not start it, because he got me in contact with the distributor, and he helped me quite a lot when I started my whole DJing and label work. So we found the studio, and I was directly thinking about Klaas and Jan when I saw the rooms, and I called them, and we've been here, and it was more or less built like it is, but we, of course, invented quite a lot, especially here in this room. And then we had the idea to build like a collective, because I'm more or less still DJing quite a lot, and Jan is an amazing producer, and Klaas is mixing and mastering. We work quite as a team, so we offer all these services to people that want to produce something, they want to learn something, but every one of us works, of course, as a separate unit. You know, Klaas has his Black Hat Studios, Jan-Eric is Jan-Eric Scholz production. He produced also other people, not only me. But together it was quite of an interesting synergy, and it works quite well. And because we know each other so long, so we trust each other also. And sometimes, especially when you work in a creative process, what we all do in music and production and stuff, it's good that you work with people where there is always like a constructive criticism. I hope I can say this right. So it's really important, especially for me, to have this interaction with people. They are known in some points a little bit better than I, and also in the opposite, it works quite well. So it's a good team. And for the first time, actually, what we're doing this year, we're leaving these rooms and going to offer our services and our knowledge, what we have on all these years, and doing some master classes. We start now probably in Switzerland and go around. And yeah, if you want to know something, write us. So we are talking today about a track on which I produced with Jan for the album So Me, the track called Sanctuary, featuring Stereo MCs. And we did the album, we released it on November 2017. And actually we started working a year before, I think in the winter time, around Christmas or something. And I wanted to have as much time as possible, so I didn't have like pressure for a release date or something. So we really had a lot of time to think about ideas, to work on ideas, and it was for me quite heavy, because my first album was released 8 years before, and then I was completely in this dance floor theme, and I never produced something else than dance floor tracks and tracks which works in clubs. And of course it took a while to be in the status to say, okay, I'm now feeling it, I'm now right for an album which could be going also in different ways. Of course, it's quite difficult when you always make dance floor tracks, then like completely go to something else. But this was actually our main goal. And this is how we work together, because Jan is really experienced in this. He can realize my ideas always really good. I have to say, I'm always produced with someone, but since more than 3 years, it's Jan and me mainly working together. And so it was for me also the right moment that I had the feeling I have the right producing partner who understands me quite well, what I want to do. And it took some time really to go a little bit away from the dance floor. And of course, when you listen to the album, you can still feel that I still have a really, that I'm still close to the dance floor and to the clubs. So there are some tracks. Sanctuary was a track what I wanted to have on the album, which a little bit pop feeling, pop appear, which was quite difficult, because of course for a pop song you have to arrange it different, you have to go away from this loop. So it was a track we worked the most time on it, actually, and it was also not easy to find then a vocalist, because I wanted to work with a male vocalist. I wanted to have it also a little bit cool, dirty somehow this was quite a lot of thinking who we can work with, and we had mainly the basic concept, and we could feel there is like a vocalist missing. So I've been to a couple of tracks, and before I produced with Jan the album, I've been to all my old records, to all my record collection to get inspired. And then I had the idea, because there was like a really funny story. There was like a boiler room just in the opposite of my apartment, in a really, really small, dirty apartment, which was actually rent from Terra Nova. And it was a normal afternoon in Berlin on a weekly day, and I heard some music, and I went to the window, and because I liked the music and I know the music, it was actually for the presentation of the Terra Nova album. And I was like, what's going on there? So I took my little son, and I've been to the neighbors because I wanted to know what's going on. And there was actually a boiler room filmed, and I was the only guest with my son because they didn't make it public. But who was in there and who was performing was Rob from the Stereo MCs. And I was like, oh, you know, I mean, everyone has a story with the Stereo MCs. We all were connected somehow in the 90s, 93 or when it was. So it was a really, really big influence. And I was super impressed to sit suddenly in a little room with him. And but he was so nice, and we didn't have a chance to talk because he was actually in the filming. But then I went home and I called him directly and said, hey, you know what? I want to have Rob. He's an amazing performer. This is the vocal, what I want. And then I sent him an email. And actually it took like one day, and he replied really nicely and said, yes, I follow your label. I know your stuff, your DJing and your stuff, what you did before. And I'm absolutely up for it. And this is how we were in contact, and I was like so proud and going crazy, and it was not actually a big deal. I think sometimes you just have to try it and you have to follow your instincts, and I was at the right moment at the right place to get this idea who can do the vocals. No? And that we had in the end such an impressive professional vocalist, because it was like we had nothing to do actually. We sent him like the ideas, and then bam, 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 it was another day or maybe 2 days.
2 days after, yeah.
And he sent like this amazing vocal ideas, and there was nothing we were complaining. We were just sitting here and both had completely on goosebumps, called all our friends like, you won't believe what happened. We have like vocals from Rob from the Stereo MCs here, and they're fitting like, and we had a session at Sasse studio, what you're gonna see later, where we have this huge speakers, and it was fantastic. And actually after this, there was like a kind of a friendship building up. So we played together, we did a video together, and it was really the most interesting part of the album, to get connected with Rob from the Stereo MCs.
Yeah, starting from scratch. So usually when we do music, we start always with the octa track to have a session, to find a groove basement, to feel comfortable with, and also trying to trigger all my hardware and analog stuff from the octa track, to have really a basic idea of what's inside of the music part. How can I say this? Yeah, the music part. And after we are both good with it, the plan is to record it over my Midas desk into Ableton. Really like sessions like for 2 or 3 minutes, and collecting it into in Ableton, and then starting to build up more and more song-wise, do a pre-arrangement, do for sure a bit mixing with EQing, just EQing and some effects, not too much. And yeah, that was the main process to build up the song, without the vocals for sure. So the vocals came later from Rob.
Of course, before we starting the process and we used the octagon, Jan is really able. I'm always coming with a feeling into the studio. Which I told you before, I wanted to have like kind of a dirty pop song, and with this feeling, I'm really happy that I work with Jan, that he really can understand it directly, and present me some ideas. It's not easy because I work with a lot of producers that someone can even make his own taste, put it back and understand directly what the guy or in the opposite wants, or your client where you work with. So
I mean, at the end, what's really helpful for me, sometimes I travel with Anja when she's DJing all over the world, and I listen to her sets lots of time in the last year. So now it's easier for me to understand the artist Anja Schneider when she's DJing and what's her main idea about music and stuff. So I start with the kick drum, easy. So we did it in an octa track, so it's just a kick with some groovy fills also. Oh, this is not on. This was the Evolver.
Only the kick.
Yeah, that's the kick drum.
You won't believe how much octagon kick drums I have on my.
It's just the intro. I can do a step until here. Yeah, I think it's an sample kick drum. I've sampled from an old vinyl, I think. Yeah. And filtered a bit, and and then we add for sure some more percussions like toms, also coming from the octa track sample, closed hi-hats, open hi-hats like this. Just good.
Yeah.
Like this. And then, after we had this basic idea in our Ableton, then we start to play also. Then we start also to play keyboards. Like this, so like drone sounds. I like this old Polaris. It's really rare synth, and I'm proud that he's working still.
So it's lauter machen.
So this drone we also recorded in the song, so I improvised now, so I muted all the rest in the track. So until this point, there's also closed hi-hats and from the octa track and open hi-hat. Oh, this one I can mute. So, and also snare fills and some claps. And after we have finished this basic groove thing, we start to looking for a bass line or something. So most of the time I start with some easy stuff. So like the Virus, I know a lot of things, technical things. So it's easy for me to get really fast or really quick a sound what I'm looking for. And yeah, we just played around. Yeah. Anja's also trying some stuff on the keyboard, and we had this idea of the Virus. Let me show you. There's the rest. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was the bass line of the song. So we did a really long session with cut-offing and release stuff. Really nice sound. And yeah, after we did the session, then for sure you can look at this. I cut, always find the right parts for the right place, you know, so it's not even the same. You did the really 100% perfect session in that way. So also to find some, to cut something, and at the end is also doing interesting mixing with, wie sagt man, unerwartet, also
it's unexpected.
Unexpected
because
things.
Then you come to another new idea.
Sorry. So I know this, from my side, I know this comfortable thing about class in my next room, so I don't have to focus too much on good sounding, you know. So I go more from my feelings, and I know there's another room next, and class is really professional to adjust some things, yeah. So we can do like musicians, you know, not to technique. So in that part, I go over to this bass line here. So now we mute this virus thing here, and I can talk about the loud. So now you can see I do also with the EQ some fadings, frequency in, frequency out things. Using some compression and side signal things. Bass, there was nothing special, so I used my, like most of the time, my microwave bass with an extra access programmer. I can do also like fine adjustments. Recording it directly into my Apollo 8 sound card. Over the mixer, direct out, direct into the computer to Ableton, and it's nothing special, but it's just the bass. 2 tracks mixed together, not too musical, but bass.
Yeah.
I also use sometimes, on this track for sure, my Oberheim Matrix 1000. So it is so also for some mystical pads. Yeah,
I love the music.
some really cold, a bit cold sounding, but I love it. So to keep the tension in some parts, you know. Yeah, about the Polaris I told you before. So we recorded also some pads and drones. Let me look for the output. Sorry, like this. And after recording, we do with these tracks also a bit pushing level things and frequencies. Gonna changing a bit. Also with this part is also the Polaris. Okay. So and before the idea with Rob was, I did also like a vocal. What's changing all the time to left and right. I also use sometimes the Arturia package for some software synths, not too often, but when I'm looking for a software synth, sometimes I don't know, I can't find in my hardware that stuff. I'm looking for a 2-year bundle, and in this part I found a really simple synth hit, like a simple square sound, like this. Nothing special, but brings the groove. So, now we can go over to the vocals, I think. So in this main idea, we sent over to Rob, and really after 2 days, he was sending a perfect fitting idea. So we sent him the whole track bounce, and he was sending us like 3 parts, starting with this thing. So he added a core on it, what was really unexpected for Rob. So he was. So this sound he added in his studio. Then there was a singing track. So it is like not what we expected from Rob, like this. So we was, okay, he's singing for us.
Come with me. Sanctuary. Come with me.
Okay. And at the end, he was also doing his style, what we know from him, like doing
Kind of rapping.
kind of rapping, yeah. Can I say this? Rapping,
No.
yeah, okay.
Can you do whatever is necessary? Can you speak what lives in your heart? Is it true we just repeat history? Or could it be we'll make a new start? Are we twisted into conformity? Normalized from the moment of birth? Energize, reach for the remedy. Straighten out, feel the energy surge.
Okay, that's it. And there was really not so much to work on it, on the vocals.
After this, yeah.
After this, so just a bit EQing always a bit. So I the effects I did. I like to use my usually it's a guitar pedal effect, but I love to use it for my electronic music. It's from Line 6. It's like a delay modular, and I can do really long feedback sessions
Straighten out, feel
like
the
this.
energy surge.
Really long feedback. Like this.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was about the vocals. The idea of the arrangement in the track was from Rob. So he sent us the line what's going through the whole song. So what I did, I cut it a bit and bring it in the right time, you know. So and that's it. So there was not too much work.
Which normally is not usual when you work with a vocalist, because we had also other examples where we had to do everything. So we are really thankful. I mean, they're professionals since years in the business, and they know exactly what to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's also for me sometimes it's about a bit respect the vocalists, you know. So Rob is, so I remember the time back in the days here in Berlin and at the old WMF, sorry, BMW. Was one of my heroes back in the days to listen to this guy, and so I don't want to destroy his session or something, or look to change too much in his idea of music. So it's a bit of respect, I think. So yeah, the bass we had, some ads, drones, hi-hats. I also add a bit piano on it. I can show you. Where is it? Here.
That is pink.
Make a new start. Are we
More here.
Can you do
Meeting the book.
whatever is necessary? Can you speak what lives in your heart? Is it true? We just
It's nothing special. It's Ableton piano, so just to have like
A little element, which
little
is like
element
a sound of
what
it.
gives a short. So and when we have finished all the stuff, at first, for sure, I do a bounce for Anja, and she's trying to play it on stage and to have the feedback also from the people. It's important for us to test the bounces before we go over to Sasse's room. Sometimes we change then things frequency-wise. It has to be more different energy, or I don't know. So we take our time for this. And when Anja is saying, okay, we can do this, is approved from Anja, then we also have a listen in classroom. And I'm going over to bounce not every track, but maybe a multi-bounce with some elements. So for example, the kick drum solo and the bass solo, the vocal solo, and hi-hats and percussion stuff solo. So like 8 or 10 tracks. And with these tracks, I go over to class, and we will start to go over to mix.
Okay, my name is Klaus Lindblad. I run the mixing and mastering room in Berlin. I actually have another company called Blackhead Studios, but I work with Anja Schneider, of course, with all her productions. And yeah, that's my room. Welcome. Okay, so yeah, with the Sanctuary track, we basically had stems from Anja and Jan-Eric coming in, basically just normal 44, 24-bit stems. I think it was around 25 stems altogether. So this was actually almost separate tracks. And so what I do is put them into Pro Tools and clean them up basically digitally, enhance them, somehow. If I need something, but basically mostly MS cleaning, EQing, and then I sum them through my analog summing gear, which is basically a few Pultec clones, quite a lot of old EQs, some tube stuff, PCA compressor, LA28 clone, and then I go into a spec XSum, which basically goes into my 2-bus, which is my mastering gear, and then I use any of these to basically make the sound what I want to have it, how I want to have it. And yeah, with this project, the main thing was the lead vocal, of course, from Rob, and the rap part in the middle, if you can call that rap, to get it sounding right, so it's fine in a club as well as in radio, because it's definitely a radio song as well. So we start with a kick drum. Usually I have it up in a session, and what I do is I did some light EQing to it first to get it, sounding right, mostly around 200. There's always some peaks, from either samples. I don't know really what kick Anja and Jan used on this one. Then I'm using a freeware plugin called OTT to basically, it's a multi-band compression and upward compressor. So basically it just makes, things a bit fatter, which I like a lot, it's freeware, so you should get it. Then there is some dynamic EQ. I don't even know why, but let me see here. Okay, there's on the kick there's a super low, kind of a low sub bump, which I wanted to tame a bit, to have it more better sounding in a normal sound system, not only clubs. And then I use my trusted DBX 160, which I always put on kicks, just because it's a drum compressor and it just sounds so good. After this, basically, I work with the bass to get the kick and the bass to play well together. The bass needed some work because I think the bass came from a digital synth. I think it was I'm not really sure what it was called, but I think it's a digital synth. So there was something which I cut, quite a lot, 6 dB at 46, steep cut, And on top of that, there's actually nothing else. It has a dynamic equalizer, which is triggered from the kick drum. So basically, every time the kick hits, the low frequency part of the bass line goes down. So that makes the groove quite good. And after this, I basically routed the bass line into my Tegeler Varitube compressor, just to give a bit of color. It's not compressing much. Actually, we can check the level of compression. So the sub is being minimally compressed, just to give it a bit more color, and that usually works quite well for low basses. Then there's a virus bass, which is giving the melody part, which we can listen to here, which is very low. I don't know why it is, because it's going to pull text. Let me see what's going on here. There's some EQing on that as well. And so I process that, sound. And after this, when I have the bass and the kick done, I basically try to get the drums and the loops, whatever is involved in the song, to get into the groove. So there is quite a lot of processing on a digital domain, some EQing, and maybe some panning, for some things. Okay, actually a pad, so that should go down there. So when I have the drums done, I start to work with the musical parts and basically try to get it sounding like a record. And I keep the vocals as long as possible out of the equation. And when the music is then, sounding well with the drums, I basically try to put the vocals in, EQ them, of course. There's quite a lot of processing on the EQs as they were coming, not recorded here, so I didn't know which microphone they used and stuff like this. So basically, there's some MS EQing because the stems were stereo, and I think there was some reverb actually on the vocals as well already in the stems. Let me see what's going on here. So I basically use some classics. Basically, I use the Pultec just to give it a bit more shine and a bit low end. LA28 and PB Sonic Maximizer, which I don't use much, but when I can use it, it's really good. I mean, there's a hardware of this as well, which I used for many years, so I do like it. After this, I run it through my Filtec EQ, which is 70s EQ from Germany, and I basically just have a bit of shine at 15K, and then I take some low mids out, just to try to mold it into the song, so to say. Then the BVs, they have as well quite a lot of low cut. And then a few peaks at 1.4 and 2.7 just to cut them down on both sides, actually, M and S. And then they have a bit of small ambience reverb room reverb on the backing vocals. And then basically it sounds like this.
The sky tonight's the night that we shall rise.
Okay, so where the track is kind of like sounding okay with the vocals, I start to think like, okay, where do I want to route them? I mean, I basically work in the box as long as I can, and then I start to put them into my gear, you know, like I have already the bass going into the tegeler, the vocals going into old EQ, maybe some stuff needs to go to Pultex, and then I can basically, like I have 16 outputs, stereo outputs, so I can do quite a lot of like routing. If I need to process something more heavily, I just basically record it through the gear and record it back. But I can keep my like total recall by just routing stuff into different gear and get a bit of, you know, I'd only do like light touches, you know. It's only to get a bit of color, and then basically I sum it on the spec. And the spec is kind of, I never touched levels, so it's just a summing mixer. Even if the levels are now quite wild here, I've been doing some other projects. So, but usually I basically sum it here, and then I go to the 2-bus, where which is basically like a mastering setup, where I have an insert switcher with 6 inserts. So basically, usually I use the Varimu, which is from a company called HDL, handcrafted labs. I use that very lightly. So let's see how this works if with a Varimu on.
Come with me and touch the sky. Tonight's the night.
So I'm basically just giving it a bit of like compression with fairly you know, slow attack and a fast release, just to give it a bit more like, you know, bump. It's just giving, it has so many tubes inside and transformers, so it just gives basically a nice color to the whole mix. Then I might use some EQing at the final stages, and for the cleanness I use the Better Maker, which I love. It has a Pultex section and 2 EQs MS built in, so it's very good for just like making things wide, and you know, and also get a bit of bump in the low end. And maybe at the end I might use some limiting, but I also might do that, you know, leave that to the mastering engineer or to the mastering stage, because this is still mixing or summing, you know, so I don't want to touch like the levels. I just want to have it on a good level going into the AD converter, which you see here, and trying to keep the levels kind of you know, moderate, to give space to the mastering engineer or myself to then to pump it up in the mastering stage. So that's how it works. When I have a mix done, you know, I usually also try to do like a quick master, just to have it being able to play it out, you know, send it to the artist, you know. Usually people want to hear it like in a moderate level, and they A/B it with other stuff. So I try to make you know, a mastered version as well, but that's not going to be the final master, because I always want to have a few days in between the mix which is done and the mastering. It's also nice to sometimes have another pair of ears to listen to it and, you know, and play it out, you know, and then you have some commentary, there's some comments, you know, and then, you know, maybe one sound needs to be louder, something with the low end needs to be changed. And sometimes even we can go back to Jan's studio and rework something and get a new stem and rework that way, you know, the track, you know. So it's kind of like an ongoing process. So it's not like that I would take things and keep them, you know, for myself and say like, that's it. Because we work like that's the best of this studio complex, that we can actually, the production, mixing and the mastering, it's all one, you know. So it works really well. So the mastering part basically is then, I still work in Pro Tools for mastering as well. So I have a stereo track. Sometimes I have stems, you know, 4 or 8 stems for mastering, which I don't prefer, but sometimes it's better for the production. If I didn't mix it myself, that means. So anyway, stereo mastering is basically, I have a track playing through my converters, going into the mastering setup, and like I have the same as with mixing, I have the inserts. I can say I need a bit of color, I need a bit of tubing, I need a bit of 70s, you know, flair. So I choose my inserts, process also sometimes, of course, the tracks digitally already. Work a lot with MS, try to clean up things on the side signal, checking the levels as well. If it's a whole EP, that actually everything is even leveled out to my gear. So basically, you have a nominal level where the gear actually reacts the best, also for signal to noise ratio. And then it's just choosing basically what I want to use. What does the track need? If it needs more warmth, more like, you know, air, what gear I use. And it's the same, you know, the Better Maker is just an amazing EQ because it's so versatile and clean. I have customized, you know, mastering EQ, analog EQ as well from Custom Audio Germany. It's a Soundtech clone, and it's basically connected to an MS box, so I can listen to stuff in either mono or stereo, and I can process this, you know, the mono side and the stereo side on its own, which is sometimes more versatile than using the Better Maker, but they do have a different sound. This one is a bit softer, and this is just clean, tight transients go through. I do have a 60s inductor EQ as well, which I use. It's a passive EQ, so I need a pull-up amp for it. So I have a few preamplifiers as well here for mastering, which is maybe not so normal. But if I need 33 dB of gain after that EQ. It has a very special sound. The air band is just like, it's a 10K, but it goes like very high, nicely up. So I use that a lot, but then I basically have to pull it up with, I have some API preamps and some Tonelux preamps, which I basically use for pulling it up the level, and thus, you know, getting it back to the normal level where the other gear needs to interact with. So that's basically it. Then I capture the sound of this processing, capture it back to Pro Tools, and then I use the final limiting and the final cleaning up if there's anything which disturbs me, or if the mix needs maybe some more air or some dynamic EQ, I do that digitally. So the final limiting happens in the computer, because I found all the limiters I tried for mastering weren't really what I was looking for. So basically it's DMG limitless and Sony Sonox limiter, which I use as final limiters. Radio mastering is different, of course, because the levels on radio are still quite loud. I try to keep the levels for club music fairly moderate, let's say like this. So I would say like I use a measurement called lufs, and I try to keep it between 8.5, 9.5 for club music. Radio needs to be very much more louder. That means that it will be around 5 or 6. And this is something which I don't really personally like, but that's what they need, because otherwise they won't play it. So there's always finding the right, you know, way of like what the client wants. And of course, with Anja's case here, I was doing, of course, the radio masters really loud because otherwise it won't get played.
Thank you for watching us. This was Anja Schneider, and you saw the production and the whole process of the track Sanctuary, what we did with the Stereo MCs. Thank you for this. And it was out actually last November on my label Zeus Music. If you get interested and we catch your attention, you always can get in contact with me on the easiest way, and let's do it on Instagram or Facebook, or even on my website. You're going to find it. My name is Anja Schneider.